Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon for the first ever Arabian Travel Market Global Halal Tourism Summit. This summit has been put together in recognition of the huge growth potential of the Islamic tourism sector, often referred to as halal travel or halal tourism. Its value is tipped to hit $233 billion by 2021. That's some 13% of total global travel expenditure. Yet it's a market that's still underserved by the travel and hospitality industry at large. Today, we are joined by some of the world's leading halal tourism experts from the Middle East, Asia, and from Europe. They're all pioneers in this sector. Our experts today will discuss the importance and the influence of this sector, its nuances, its value, its growth potential, how to sell it, and how not to sell it. Today we're going to run 3 back-to-back sessions on this topic. The first one looks at the big picture. It will start with a short presentation by one of Asia's leading travel industry entrepreneurs, which is Faiz Fadlillah. He's the co-founder and CEO of 2 online businesses dedicated to the fast-growing halal travel sector, Salam Standard and TripFez. Faiz will present the key findings of the Global Economic Impact of Muslim Tourism report by Salam Standard. We'll hear how the Middle East benefits from Muslim travel in terms of GDP, contribution and jobs, and is also one of the world's biggest spending outbound halal travel markets. His fellow panelists will discuss these findings and also talk about their halal tourism growth stories. So joining Faiz on the panel, Faiz is there on the far right. Next to him we have Mr. Zulkifli Mohammed Saeed, who's the Director General of Islamic Tourism Centre, an agency of Malaysia's Ministry of Tourism and a leading global authority on Islamic tourism. Malaysia's tourism industry, under the guidance of ITC, has spearheaded an overwhelmingly successful halal tourism strategy that is considered a benchmark for other destinations globally. Sitting next to Mr. Zulkifli, we have Ali Manzoor. He's an associate partner at Knight Frank. Ali is one of the region's leading hospitality industry specialists. He's helped major operators develop market entry strategies and select operators for their hotel assets. And during his time at Knight Frank, he's witnessed an increasing number of entities wishing to develop accommodation for Muslim travellers. He's going to tell us why. And last, but by certainly no means least, sitting next to him, we have Enver Jebi, who is the co-founder, Chief Operating Officer of HalalBooking.com, one of the world's top booking sites for halal travel. Enver and a group of visionary Muslims launched HalalBooking.com back in 2009. Over the last 8 years, it's become a leading portal for Muslim-friendly holidays, with customers in more than 75 countries. So, before we chat, I'd like to invite Faiz up to give his presentation. Faiz? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gemma. All right, so I'm going to be talking about the global picture of halal tourism and some of the key findings which we found out during our last report, which we released last year. If anyone wants to tweet a question, if you're shy to ask any question, you can tweet it to one of the tweets there, and one of our people and myself would reply to that. So it's interesting that the global tourism market has always been growing robustly since the 2009, the downturn of 2009. And if you look at the global tourism picture, the global tourism has grown by 37% in inflation-adjusted terms, outpacing the world's average GDP. Now, if you look at the graph itself, you can see that travel and tourism itself is one of the fastest or growing sector when compared to other sectors. And this is the report by the WTTC. This basically highlights the current trends, with the majority of tourism growth being driven rapidly by expanding economies across Asia, Africa, and Middle East. And if you look at the graph itself, you can see that one of the fastest growing market is Southeast Asia, South Asia, Northeast Asia, and within this specific context, you can see the huge growing Muslim population. And what this specific house or economy house has in common is that it houses a huge young population as well as a swelling middle class. And this specific class are attentive towards what they want. They want to express certain needs and expression, and they want this need to be met. So hence arise the concept of Muslim travel in this thing. And if you look at the report by Thomson Reuters recently, together with Dinar Standard, released a report last year which estimated that the global Islamic economy is worth about $1.8 billion and expected to reach $2.6 trillion by 2020. And this basically includes halal tourism, halal food, Islamic finance, and many other different sector. Let's have a look at Muslim travel in specific focus. Now, Muslim travel is definitely a key sector for economic development, and throughout the year of 2015, it generated about 139 billion in terms of GDP contribution, as well as 4.5 million jobs worldwide. Now, this is a huge number and a huge contribution towards the world's GDP. And within the next 10 years, what we expect to see is that it's going to be one of the fastest growing segments, as well as continuously outperform the global economy. So it's a huge sector with huge opportunity, and I think it's something which we should look carefully into. Now, looking at the whole context itself, I mean, it's wise to look at what the definition of Muslim travel is. So we define it as the availability of facilities, options, and information that allow Muslims to continuously observe and tenet Islam throughout their journey and avoid elements that deem as haram. So what does this include? So we're going to talk about that throughout the whole presentation. We took a look at 19 individual economies, which represent about 80% of the global Muslim travel market. And this includes the US, the EU, major economy across Asia and Africa. So what we found out was that if you look at the inbound Muslim tourism expenditure, the USA and EU combined represent about 44% of the global Muslim travel market. That's netting nearly about 64 billion of inbound expenditure throughout the year of 2015. Interestingly enough, Asia and Middle East country attracts more than a third of it, which is around 37% of the global expenditure. And what is fascinating is that this specific market, Asia and Middle East, is expected to be growing robustly within the next few years. And it has huge potential. And focusing a lot on Muslim travel is something which I think will be a very great strategy itself. Taking a look at the outbound Muslim tourism expenditure, now, interestingly enough, countries such as Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Iran, which forms the Middle East bloc, take up about 60% of the global market. That's nearly around 60 billion of outbound expenditure, when compared to, let's say, Asia and Europe at 20 and 17% each. So if you look at, let's say, UAE, there's about 17 billion worth of tourist expenditure throughout the whole year of 2015. It's a huge amount, a huge opportunity for basically the tourism industry to attract the UAE tourism, as well as Saudi Arabia and Iran in this case. Now, let's have a look at the GDP impact of Muslim tourism. Now, the United States and Europe account for about $26.5 billion. That's a huge contribution, or how do you say it, like income which they make towards from Muslim travel. So this, when we say direct GDP, this involves direct spending of tourists, whether it's restaurant, hotels, travel agent, airline, local transport, or retailer. I think it's not complete without looking the overall value of Muslim travel versus the inbound tourism direct GDP contribution in a specific country. So when we look at this, we can see that, for example, countries such as Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Brunei has a huge number of Muslim tourism direct GDP contribution compared to the whole entire inbound tourism, so which is a huge amount. And it's interesting to note that, let's say, Muslim travel GDP is influenced by the overall size of the tourism sector in each country. So the bigger tourism sector is, the more opportunity for Muslim travel within this specific segment. All right, so when we take it into region, it's interesting to see that 28% of Muslim tourist direct GDP versus inbound is actually in the Middle East. And what is fascinating for me is actually like countries such as America or the American continent has a huge amount of Muslim people or Muslim travelers traveling to America. And there's a huge amount, 70% is a huge amount when compared to, let's say, the Middle East at 28%. Looking at the impact itself, I think it's not complete if you don't look at the direct job contribution or direct employment created from Muslim travel. So we can see that Muslim tourism supports many jobs in business, providing direct tourism services such as transfer, airlines, hotels, the restaurant industry. And if you use this specific ratio, you can come up that it supports around 1.8 million jobs around the world. And what is fascinating is that if you look at the whole graph itself, you can see that Thailand accounts for about 250,000. Now this is because Thailand has a huge tourist industry itself and a huge amount of Muslim travelers traveling to Thailand. Tax revenue from Muslim tourism, the majority of Muslim tourism tax actually are benefited from countries in Europe and America. So combined, they are about 12.5 billion, which is almost 70% of the total across the entire geography which we study. Now, why is that? Well, this is because the large tourism sector in the US and EU, where a lot of the majority of the Muslim tend to travel to, also has a comparatively higher tax commercial environment, particularly in Europe. So they have a huge tax. When compared to, let's say, the Middle East, in contrast, such as Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and UAE, do not levy that much on sales tax. That is why you can see a huge impact of tax in the US as well as the EU in this specific graph. So it's not complete when you don't see the entire picture. So if you look at the entire picture, the sector of Muslim tourism also supports other sectors such as agriculture, which is the food, wholesale, manufacturing, professional, and all that. When you combine all of that, you can conclude that this entire supply chain is worth about 38 billion of GDP contribution and support about 1.3 million jobs worldwide. And when combining the total effect of GDP, you can see, when you include the multiplier effect, of course, you can see the US benefits a lot from the entire total contribution. So from the US perspective, it's about $50.8 billion worth of entire GDP impact, which is a huge amount. And taking a look at this, the UAE also benefits a lot from tourism in this specific, if you refer to the graph. So what we can conclude from the GDP graph is that the US and the EU accounts for about 50% of the GDP impact across all nations, which is a huge amount of number, which has a total of around $85 billion, which is around 10%, which accounts for about 10% of the overall inbound tourism market. Looking at the total employment of Muslim tourist economy, when you combine the direct as well as the indirect job contribution, the most benefit out of this is Asia and Middle East itself because it's a labor-intensive economy. And you can see that the Muslim travel demand support more than 1 million jobs in the US and Europe, and more than 50% of total employment is attributed towards Asia. So Asia is a booming economy which hires a lot of people, which is supported by huge labor economy, benefits a lot from this specific Muslim travel. And the total Muslim inbound traveler supports around 2.3 million jobs in Asia throughout the year of 2015. So what can we do to attract this specific market? Now we know it's a huge market, so there are three, you can divide it into three specific recommendations, which is we must understand the needs and preference of Muslim travelers, which is to provide amenities and alternative or flexibilities that cater to this specific need, and also we have to communicate the availability of these Muslim-friendly features as a unique selling proposition or unique selling point. So we've divided the stakeholder into three different stakeholders. The first one are tourist destination management or the destination management office, basically DMO. They are the key points towards the whole formulation of the strategy to attract this specific market. So they are in charge of formulating the entire strategy. And the first step is basically to identify the relevant stakeholder representing local government, the infrastructure owner, hotel owners, restaurants, hotel airlines, tour operators. These are all key important stakeholders which has to be involved during the whole discussion process. And it is important to communicate the availability of Muslim-friendly features as a unique selling point, which is not available in other destinations. It is also, I think for me, it's also important to engage in an outreach and educational effort to basically raise the awareness among the stakeholders on the value proposition that you bring by targeting this specific market. And I think the most important thing out of all is actually to secure the stakeholder buy-in. Because this is very important. The whole strategy is basically both top-up and bottom-up, and every relevant stakeholders are involved in this when trying to make the destination more Muslim-friendly. And I think that's something which Malaysia did a really, really good job at. They've actually engaged the entire stakeholder, from the hotels to the restaurants, to the Islamic departments. Every single stakeholder was involved during the formulation of the policy. So this is something which is really, really good, because you don't want a specific stakeholder not to be involved. For urban environment or for venues, for example, it is very important to provide facilities which allows Muslim travelers to perform their 5 obligatory daily prayers. So countries such as Australia, for example, certain venues or certain amusement park, they provide these facilities, and this is little features which makes the place a little bit more Muslim friendly. In countries with sizable Muslim population, I mean, this is very common. In Malaysia, for example, a lot of the malls, you'll tend to have praying places. In UAE, you also have that. But in countries where you have lesser Muslim population, this is a strategy which you can actually employ to basically make the place more Muslim friendly. It's very important to basically ensure that the place has to be clean, enclosed, segregated between men and women, equipped with facilities for ablution. And a little thing which you can do actually as a property owner, whether you're a hotel or you're a venue or you're an amusement park, an attraction place, is actually to provide a little arrow pointing towards Mecca. So if you realize, if you go into your room, specifically if you're in Muslim majority countries like the UAE, you tend to see an arrow. So what's fascinating for me is that I think I've met a few people which actually thought that the arrow was an exit point. So they were quite confused when they look up into the wall, into the ceiling. It's pointing to the window. So they're quite confused why the exit is actually pointing to the window. But it's actually representing the direction towards Qibla. And I think this is something which, I mean, this is a little thing which you can do. And I just spoke to Geneva, the Tourism Board of Geneva yesterday, and they were telling me that hotels in Geneva place that, I mean, it's a little thing which they can do. So they put that on the roof, and it makes the Muslim feel a little bit like home when traveling to Geneva. Now for hotels, I mean, this is very important for hotels, is to form the base, because accommodation basically form the basis and fundamental element when traveling. So you have to stay somewhere. So what accommodation can do is basically enable travelers to perform daily prayers by providing the direction of Qibla, prayer time, praying mat, the Quran. So these are little features which you can do. So I've worked with hotels, for example, which originates from Singapore. They opened a huge branch in Japan. So they were wondering how they can actually make the place more Muslim friendly. So what they did was something as little as provide the praying time, the praying direction, they provide the praying mat and the Quran. These are little things, a little investment for accommodation provider. And they've actually increased, they saw an increase of about 15% of Muslim travelers traveling to this specific hotel in Japan. You can go also a step higher and provide halal food and beverages on site, whether it's pre-ordered, whether you can actually provide it from the nearby restaurant, but these are little things which you could also do to attract Muslim travelers. And something which is very, very fascinating for me is that you could, in certain hotels, what they do is actually, they can actually request for alcohol beverages to be removed or replaced with halal substitute. So when I travel, for example, to Turkey, I was at the Crown Plaza 3 months ago, you can actually request alcohol to be removed from the minibar. The same as the UAE, certain hotels, I'm at the Sheraton, you can actually request that prior to your arrival to remove the alcohol beverages from your minibar. And a lot of the hotels are actually gone from filling the supply to have an empty bar anyway. But those hotels which actually still has that, it's something which you can actually provide that little service to. Other things include pre-order halal meal, as well as information on nearby halal eateries. These are some sweet stats which we work with a lot of hotels and a lot of people. So what we found out is that 81% of Muslims are searching for Muslim-friendly amenities. Even TripAdvisor, in their report, announced that amenities plays a key role in deciding which hotels that people want to stay at. Sites that display Muslim amenities basically increase the engagement by 147%. You want to feel that when you go to a specific place, that your demands are met, that people care for you. So these are the little things which you can do to make the people or the travelers feel like they're being cared for. Thirdly, 70% of Muslim travelers think that more information is important. And I think we have moved towards a world where information provides the basis of decision making towards the traveler. I mean, in the 80s, for example, it's all about here's the decision, here's the hotel that you have, you can actually either take this or this. But nowadays, it's more the consumer's choice. The consumer wants A, you have to provide A. The consumer wants a Wi-Fi, you have to provide Wi-Fi. Otherwise, you're starting to lose customers, and that concludes to revenue, a loss of revenue. So as a conclusion, Muslim travel is basically often cited as a fast-growing, high-potential segment of the tourism market. It has huge commercial opportunity, but also delivers important socio-economic benefits across the world. And targeting this, I think it's very important that you actually try to make your place or destination a lot more Muslim-friendly. And as you can see, that there's a huge contribution towards not just the economy, but towards the jobs creation as well. So this is basically where we work, with some of the destinations where we work with hotels in order to actually make them more Muslim-friendly. Thank you.
Thank you, Faiz. Well, I think that gave a great big picture overview of the market's potential and why we should all be tapping into it. So what I'd like to do now is hand over to our other panellists to discuss their success stories, what trends they're noticing, where the growth is coming from. So I think a good starting point would be with Saeed. Obviously, you're the trailblazers over in Malaysia and you've done a lot of research. You work with all the major bodies. So can you tell us, about this growth potential and what you've been witnessing and how big this industry is?
Thank you, Gemma. Those very kind words coming from you. But let me just firstly share with you what Islamic tourism is all about, or rather the definition of Islamic tourism. You don't have a global definition, but we look at Islamic tourism as any activity or any event in relation to travel is done in accordance with Islam. Now, when a Muslim traveler wants to start his or her travel, he or she develop an intention to travel. You develop the need to travel. And this intention must be of pure, decent intention. You do not travel to create chaos or destruction or for purpose of negative activities, engagement with negative activities. And when you travel as a Muslim, it is important for you to experience, of course, new experiences in the place you travel. You forge new relationships, you establish networking, and most importantly, you portray a good image of yourself as a good Muslim. And ultimately, you appreciate the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has done in this world to further strengthen your iman and your faith in the religion. Now, if this is done, then all Muslim travelers will be more appreciated wherever they go, in any part of the world. Now, looking back at this particular segment of Islamic tourism in the whole tourism industry, Muslim travelers has been traveling way before this topic was made an official topic of discussion in many forums or seminars in Muslim or non-Muslim countries. And with the figures shown by Faiz, without a doubt, the huge potential contributed by Muslim travelers in terms of tourist arrivals, in terms of receipts, has resulted now a lot of attention and interest given to the needs of the Muslim traveler, whether they are coming for leisure, for business purpose, whatsoever. And you have the various sub-segments of travelers. You have the leisure travelers, you have the Generation Y, you have the millennials, you have the elderly, and then of course those who travel, the Muslims that travel for purpose of religious obligation to perform the Hajj and the Umrah. Now for us in Malaysia, we are very fortunate having Islam as the official religion, officially cited in the Constitution, and having a sizable majority Muslim population, but at the same time, the approach of moderation by the government, wasatiyah, is very, very important because we also respect the existence and the needs of the non-Muslim population in the country. So for Muslim travelers coming to Malaysia, they see Malaysia a totally different environment as compared for them to be going to another Muslim country in the Middle East, for example. They will see halal restaurants side by side with non-halal restaurants. They will also see hotels serving alcohol with hotels that doesn't serve alcohol at all. They will see mosques, masjid, side by side with churches, Hindu temples, Chinese temples, and so forth. And this environment makes them feel much more easier for them when they're traveling around Malaysia. They see their needs is very well taken care of. For example, a Muslim traveler needs, we look at it as the two important needs for them is the search for halal food and for them to continue to perform their religious obligation, which is the 5 prayers in a day. So in Malaysia, we're very fortunate that the halal certification is produced by a government department. This gives further assurance and guarantee that any establishment that serves food and beverage follows through very stringent standard operating procedure by our religious department, and Muslim travelers rest assured they will get the necessary halal food and beverage that they require. And places of prayer facilities is in abundance throughout Malaysia. Government, non-government buildings, business and buildings, theme parks, stadium, rest areas along the highway, mosques. And during Ramadan, when they travel to Malaysia in Ramadan, they can easily have the breaking of fast meals, the early morning prayers. The special Ramadan Taraweeh prayers is performed widely around the country. And then, of course, the Muslim traveler is no different from any conventional traveler. They want to have a nice time, they want to have a good time, they want to enjoy their holidays with their families. So they go out and shop, they go out and visit the theme park and so forth. But at the same time, their needs as a Muslim traveler is well taken care of. And then, of course, the marketing part and the promotion part, you have Tourism Malaysia doing their bit by having the overseas office to show the seriousness shown to this market in Middle East, West Asia, Central Asia. And we are very fortunate that almost all home carriers of the OIC member countries are flying directly to KLIA to make it easier in terms of connectivity for Muslim travelers to come and visit. So I guess more or less
Thank
in
you.
a nutshell,
Yeah. That's a really good overview. Thanks.
Right.
And I want to come back to you in a minute because there's certain things that Faiz touched upon about stakeholder buy-in and education I want to talk to you because you very much pioneer that. But I'd just like to come on to actually Enver, first of all. Coming back to the big picture statistics, we heard, the figures from Faiz. Now, obviously, your business has been running for a significant amount of time. What kind of trends and growth have you seen since you set up the business?
Thank you very much. I agree, first of all, with Mr. Saeed. Is halal Muslims, traveled a lot long ago before we started this halal tourism.
It didn't just happen a few years back.
Yeah, it was just labeled differently, and we started this labeling as a halal tourism, halal friendly. For instance, when we started this about back in 6-7 years ago, I was in tourism business myself. We are working for a popular travel company in the UK as a yield manager, and I was looking for a holiday for myself as a Muslim family living in the UK, and I couldn't find. Because back then there wasn't such things, halal-friendly hotels. And I realized there are in some places, in countries like in Turkey, for instance, there were some resorts called not for tourists. They call it's not for tourists, it's for Turkish people.
Oh.
I was interested why they call it for Turkish people. There must be something differentiate them from mainstream tourists. But as tourists, they meant.
So they didn't call it halal friendly or
they
Muslim
didn't call
friendly.
it
Yeah,
halal.
it was just for Turkish people. Yeah.
And even they call it alternative hotels or something. So I was interested in that, and I visited them, and I realized this is for a hotel designed for Muslim families, basically. But they call it not Muslim families; they call it Turkish families. And then, even now we have some hotels in Egypt. In Egypt, they call themselves as not for tourists, for Egyptians.
Yep.
So as a customer, I started myself. Then I visited, and then we stayed in a hotel, and we enjoyed it very much. And especially my wife enjoyed it very much because there were some basing areas dedicated for ladies only, etc. And when I was back, I realized there must be a big market for this. People like me looking for such places. Just in the UK, there were about 3 million Muslim population, and most of them are halal conscious customers. And so we started this halal booking search site, let's say. Halal booking is a search and book, by the way. So when halal conscious customers, they can search according to some halal criteria. Let's say someone going to Turkey, Istanbul, or London from Dubai, they can search for hotels which provides halal food, or they can filter which hotels provide nearby the halal restaurant, or has dedicated ladies-only facilities, beach areas, spa facilities. So they can filter out all the list, and they can choose their hotel, and they make the booking. So we started back then with Turkey, with a couple of hotels, and the number growth, we had double growth, triple growth year by year, and then some mainstream media started, pay attention at that. They called it as the birth of halal holidays. The Guardian started it.
The
BBC,
Guardian, that's right. Yeah.
And then this was labeled as halal tourism, halal holidays. For European, Muslim population, it was very understandable, very clear.
So how big is your business today? I mean, how many customers? You've got 75 countries, is that correct?
We have customers from over 75 countries at the moment. The biggest proportion for us is Western Europe.
Right.
Which we estimate in whole Europe, we have about 30 million, 25 million precisely Muslim people living. Specifically in Western Europe, where in the UK 3 million, 5 million in France. So biggest proportion is coming from Europe as a market.
Right.
And then second, the GCC growing very fast.
Yep.
I assume in a year, GCC will take over Europe in terms of proportion.
Yeah.
And Turkey is the biggest market. It's estimated about 20 million halal conscious travelers there.
Right.
I would say even one of the top countries will be Turkey.
Yeah.
But mainly Turkish people traveling, not abroad, but within the Turkey. That's another thing. Russia is one of the biggest as well. There were about. So
it's really everywhere is growing, would you say? Yeah. And are there any destinations in particular that are popular? Just quickly, because then I want to come on to Ali about the hotel side of things.
Our customers, most popular destination is Turkey at the moment. Most of
and
these
is that, because this is going to bring me on to Ali, is that because of those very specific hotels that offer that complete halal experience? Because they're very unique, those resorts, aren't they? We still haven't really seen it anywhere else. Is that, would I be right in saying that?
Definitely, more or less, It is mostly in Turkey, this kind of resort. It's not all about food they provide.
No, it's the whole experience.
Beyond the whole experience is, appealing to Muslim families in terms of leisure, especially. When someone going to leisure holiday, they want beyond something, food. So there are dedicated women-only facilities like beach areas, sun-basing areas, even sea areas.
It's basically the whole package, isn't it? Now, thank you, Enver. Now, Ali, You've been noticing a lot of growth in terms of stakeholders coming to you, investors that want to look into halal or Sharia compliant concepts. There's a difference. Can you tell us a bit more about, what you've been seeing at Knight Frank?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the issue that we've had really is trying to define what Muslims want. And
Because you said there's 3 types you've identified, isn't there? 3 broad.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, not all Muslims are the same. So, the first issue is with interpretation. My version of Islam will be different to maybe my neighbor slightly, will be different
Yes.
to someone across the street.
Yeah.
And we're all in the same vicinity.
Yeah.
Then when you add further complexity in terms of culture, so you look at different countries, a Muslim in China, his idea of, halal holiday will be different to somebody in the Middle East, will be different to somebody in Africa.
Sure.
And that's another layer of complexity.
Yes.
And then when you look at how the people prescribe to Islam, you have people who are strict observers, who are moderate Muslims, and people who are non-practicing
Yes.
Muslims.
Yeah.
So there was a recent study done, it was for one of the OIC countries, I forget which is at the moment, but when they sort of looked at Muslim travel as a whole, what they found was that 20% were actually strictly practicing. And
Right.
required the full
20%
package,
strictly.
yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
The 60% were moderate.
Right.
And 20% were non-practicing.
Right.
And the wants and the needs of all of these segments are slightly different. So if you go to, from one extreme, the non-practicing Muslim, their choices would not be based on faith.
Right.
And at most, they would look for halal food and a lack of pork.
Whereas the other end of the spectrum, it's very strict. Yeah.
Yeah, it goes all the way. So for
Sure.
moderate Muslims, what's more important is the provision of halal food, prayer facilities, also sort of the cleaning facilities and the washrooms, and also Ramadan services
Yeah.
during Ramadan period.
Yeah.
But the most extreme, that would go even further to segregated Muslim activities. That would be separate beaches,
Sure.
separate pools. And on sort of primary interviews, we sort of realized that women especially before would go to the beach and feel like they had to watch. That
Sure.
They
Yeah,
couldn't be
yeah.
included because there was no separate areas for them. And the same with pools for some degree. But
So
then,
you're starting to see hotel groups then want to tap into this, or rather the hotel groups or the investors. Who's driving it? Because then it comes to where they make their profit from. Getting into more detail now,
Yeah.
but what are you seeing in terms of the hotel industry and wanting to cater to this market?
well, I mean, profitability is certainly an issue. One is there's a marketing issue, but profitability is
Yes.
another one. So in terms of your operation, the biggest difference will obviously be that you should not serve alcohol.
Yeah.
When you look at F&B, typically one of the most expensive departments to run, 60% cost. And food, if you just look at cost, you don't look at the overhead expenses, salaries, everything like that, just food cost. You're looking at about 40 to 45% food cost
Yeah.
On sale. When you look at beverage, you're looking at 20% cost.
Right, okay.
So that drives up the profitability considerably.
Sure. So
Now-
do you think the hotel industry is therefore reticent because they're making a lot of money off of the F&B and the alcohol side of things? Do you think or do they see the commercial opportunity beyond that because of all the figures we've heard about, that it's a huge market? In Turkey, for example, Enver, I remember talking to one of your colleagues, he said they're 100% full year round.
Yeah.
Because there's no one else doing it like they're doing it. So if you've got 100% occupancy, you're going to make your money elsewhere, aren't you?
Gemma,
Yes.
if I may interject here, I would like everyone here to please understand that Islamic tourism is not something that is to be forced upon. It's not something to be forced upon if, for example, you are running a business that serves the travelers. You are running a restaurant, you are managing a hotel, or you own a hotel, whatever it is. However, if you feel that you want to expand your business to the Muslim traveler, then you must understand these are the adjustments that you need to make in your businesses, organization, to get their attention and to capture their presence in your respective business. Let me give you an example. Singapore, our closest neighbor down south of Malaysia. When McDonald's first opened the branch in Singapore, it was not halal at all. But then later on, they found out that they were missing on the Muslim market. Because there's also a good number of Muslim citizens in Singapore. They get Malaysians coming from Malaysia, cross over to spend their time in Singapore, whether visiting their relatives or whatever it is. And they also get whatever number of Muslim travelers they get at that time. So the management decided, to convert all the McDonald's branches halal, and business grew.
Yes.
Even in Malaysia, the buying in of this concept also was difficult. Basically, the business establishment, particularly the hotels at that time, were only having minimum requirements. The prayer direction, the prayer mat, the musalla, and halal kitchen. But later on, we came out with a Muslim-friendly standard that expand on this minimum requirement. And now we have hotels that engage halal executives or Sharia council whatsoever to advise the management on everything that has to do with halal. So we even have a hotel in Malaysia which is owned by a Malay Muslim. All the management board of directors were Muslim, managed by Muslim. They were running a conventional hotel with the entertainment lounge, alcohol was served, this and that. And the general manager was decided to, convert into a Sharia compliant hotel or Muslim friendly hotel. No alcohol, close down the lounge, no channels that whatever it is, show these various entertainment program whatsoever. And he had a very hard time to convince the top management, and these were all Muslims, These were all
Yeah.
Muslims. But at the end of the day, they decided, okay, let's try this.
Sure.
And over the years, occupancy rate grew,
Yeah.
business grew.
Yes.
They even had non-Muslim families coming
Yeah.
to stay because they have children. They don't want to socialize or see.
Yeah. They want it to be
people-
family friendly. Yes.
Yeah, that drink alcohol, and when they drink, they get a bit out of hand and create problems. It's quiet, it's peaceful, they appreciate the halal food, So the potential is there. And a few years ago, when I was in Japan, addressing a group of Japanese businessmen running all these restaurants, in Japan, the people don't go back home after work. They drop by at the restaurant to have a meal, sake, drink sake, sushi, whatever, then they go back home. So they asked me, why should we accommodate this segment? Our business is already good. So I tell them the same thing, this is not something that we are forcing you
Yeah.
to do. If you feel that you want to capture this market,
Yes.
you want a business from them, these are the adjustments you need to make.
Yeah.
So now you see Mitsukoshi Shopping Center in Tokyo having a nice musalla. I think Disney World, Tokyo also is going to have these prayer facilities and halal restaurant. Kansai Airport in Osaka now has a halal restaurant and a nice musalla room. And they are seriously
Yeah.
looking into engaging all these halal requirements, not just for the Olympics, Muslim
Yeah.
athletes, but beyond that. So the attention by non-Muslim countries has certainly grown.
Yes. Yes.
They
yeah.
see the value of this market. But I want to make it clear, nobody is forcing
No.
anybody here.
It's making the opportunity, they're
Yes.
taking the opportunity
Yes.
if you want to. Yeah.
You don't want to make this adjustment
No.
because they twist arm you or whatever it is.
No, exactly. No, thank you. One of the things I was going to touch upon was here in the Middle East, obviously, a place like Dubai, all the food is halal anyway. So you've got that. But then I always think that maybe there's then a little bit of complacency because they think, oh, well, we are kind of halal friendly anyway, but we're not really marketing it as such. You proved in Malaysia that everyone can be side by side as we are in Dubai. But what do we need to do here to kind of capitalise on this market, and what market should we be looking to, and what models should we be looking to? Would anyone like to answer that?
Okay, maybe if I may try to attempt this, I think there should be more effort here by all relevant parties.
Yes,
Whether you are
This is what I'm
government
getting
or
at,
running
yeah.
a business, you want to show that you want to reach out to this segment. And when you reach out, you have the respect for these people that are traveling. I saw a Korean non-Muslim. He wanted to open a hotel solely for Muslim. and in Korea, in Seoul. And he faced a lot of resentment from his Korean friends through Facebook, social media, whatsoever. Why are you doing this? What's so special about these people that you need to, have a separate swimming pool or whatsoever, all those kind of things. But as Faiz has shown, this Muslim traveler is, I would say, a misunderstood
Yes.
group of people. Sorry.
That's okay. Take a sip.
So you you need to develop, firstly, the understanding.
Yeah. Okay.
They are traveling around. They are not no different from any traveler.
No. And I
But
think
they-
a lot of people think it's religious tourism, and it's
Yes.
not at all.
They have
Yeah.
some special
Yeah.
needs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah.
you make that adjustment
Yeah.
to meet them, and they will be happy to come and engage with you
Yeah,
and spend their money.
sure.
It's a matter of demand and supply, I would say.
Yes.
There are even, vice versa situations, like very Muslim appealing resorts run by non-Muslim
Yes.
owners,
yeah.
investors.
It's merely seen as a
because
commercial.
they see the
yeah,
opportunity,
Yeah.
they see that there is a demand, and the demand creates,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
I mean, even there are other situations like some religious people, they open a hotel and they say, I'm not going to serve alcohol because it's haram. It's coming from the religious point of view.
Yes.
That's good. But they're not doing it in a right way completely. When they say there's no alcohol in the hotel, but everything is mixed.
Right.
For
Okay. Yeah.
instance.
Yeah.
And it's not appealing, to, if it's a resort.
Yes.
I'm not talking about city hotel. It's not completely appealing to a Muslim traveler,
Yes,
a halal
yeah.
conscious traveler. When they come there, yeah, alcohol-free environment, it's good, but it's not good enough
Right,
for them
yeah.
to choose that hotel.
Right. Okay.
Unless they prefer to have some, women-only, women-friendly facilities,
Yes.
like dedicated spas for women-only pool area and beach areas, and then it can appeal to the Muslim traveler
Right.
in the right
yeah.
way.
Yeah. So yeah, Ali. I mean, what demand are you seeing now from the hotel industry for these kind of models, or are they seeing the commercial opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much about the commercial opportunity as it is about the ethos of the company.
Right.
We're seeing a lot of REITs come online, real estate investment trusts, and they're obliged to buy Sharia
And is that
compliance.
Dubai, UAE, or Pan GCC? What?
It's sort of all over. So with
Right,
offices,
okay.
with residential, I mean, that's not so much of an issue. But
Yeah.
with hospitality, there's sort of certain sensitivities there.
And do you feel there's enough stakeholder buy-in? Because, as Saib was saying, there needs to be more buy-in here. It's kind of taken for granted, there's halal food and that's it. Does there need to be a more concerted effort? And is the hotel industry on board or not really?
I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, you're saying, yes, halal tourism, we appeal to Muslims, but also that's also exclusive. Now, that's maybe because of a lack of understanding, but
Yeah.
non-Muslims would look at a halal property. Maybe they believe in all the same core tenets that it offers.
Yes.
But because they don't understand it,
Yeah, okay.
they would be sort of a little bit hesitant to go to somewhere
So
like
do you
like
think
that.
there's a lot of education
I would
required
say so.
out here? Do we all agree on that? I mean, you've come out here a lot, Enver, as well. Saeed, Faiz, what do we think about, the industry here?
I think you have to look at it more like it's not an exclusive kind of
No. It's about
tourism.
providing choice.
Yeah, it's providing choice. I
Yeah.
mean, you have family-friendly hotels, you have
Yeah.
eco-friendly hotels, you have pet-friendly hotels. So
Yeah.
a lot of the choices of hotels, they want to be inclusive. So
Yeah.
this is a specific segment you want to target as well as your normal segment. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't say like when you make it like Muslim-friendly, a lot of the properties, or I mean, a lot of the hotels might be scared that it's actually 100%. But you can do also like a mixture, which has been done by the hotel industry anyway. You have hotels which are family friendly, at the same time it's also pet friendly,
Yeah.
it's also eco friendly.
Yeah, you can have
So you can have
the two,
a
yeah.
mix of everything. So I think that the tourism industry has to see it from a point of view that it's actually making travel more inclusive rather
Yes.
than
Yeah,
exclusive
good point,
towards a
yeah.
specific segment.
Yeah, yeah,
And these
yeah.
are little things.
Yeah.
I mean, providing praying mats, that's something which is not that much of an investment anyway.
And at the end of the day, we all travel for the same reasons. Doesn't matter what religion we are, where we come from. We want an experience.
I actually spoke to, I mean, this is very interesting. I spoke to PNB Derby Park general manager this morning. So he had Richard Quest came over.
Oh, yes.
So this hotel is specifically 100% Sharia compliant. So there's no, it's a dry hotel. There's no elements which are non-friendly at all. So he came by in the morning. He sat down for breakfast. So they brought him breakfast. So he was like, wow, this looks like any other breakfast. So in the end, the conclusion is that it's actually like any other segment of travel, but then you can put little things here and there to make it more appealing.
Exactly, yeah. Now, we've got to wrap up in a sec because we've got the next session coming on soon. But Faiz, from your findings, what would you say out of all those figures, or the key figures that the Middle East should be looking at?
I think the destination, I mean, a lot of the Middle East are traveling a lot to, let's say,
because
Europe.
they're the biggest spenders, aren't they? Of all the halal travel spend, is it 60% is from Middle East travellers? So I guess it's how to retain that here,
I mean, it's a huge growth within, let's say, the Middle East. In terms of tourism as well. I mean, that's what's driving this whole spending. And I mean, in our side as well, we see that, let's say, tourists from Middle East, they tend to spend a lot more and a lot more higher class compared to like other destinations. So what their destination of choice, I mean, we can see that they love to go to Europe, they love to go to America. So these are the destination, or let's say the DMO.
America.
Exactly, America. So they have to like have huge, effort to attract the specific or make them more feeling at home. So now, these little things they can do, like putting like Geneva, I was mentioning, like Geneva putting the little direction towards Qibla is not much of an investment, and they see it like for the Muslim, they know what it is. For the non-Muslim, it doesn't affect them. It's an arrow there.
It's neither here nor there.
Now, things.
Gemma, if I may just add a little bit here, we've been talking a lot about hotels and restaurants. Now, one part of the travel industry, which until today is still, a lot of people sometimes in engagements such as this or informal, is the aviation industry.
Right, yes,
the airlines. Without a doubt, without the airlines, none of us will be able to fly or go anywhere, beyond our place that we stay. So there's been questions asked about a fully international airline running a fully alcohol-free service on board. I don't know about any of you here, if given a choice, which airline would you prefer to fly?
Well, Royal Brunei is
it's only a handful.
There's not many.
But these airlines that are alcohol-free, they don't fly everywhere. You need to go everywhere. Muslim travelers are going everywhere now.
I think it'd be a very good idea.
So I'm not saying that there is a need for this, but some kind of effort maybe
the airline industry needs to look at
it. Would be good. And maybe somebody would be bold enough to try this business and see whether there is good potential and will it transfer into profits for the Muslim travelers.
Maybe we can do that next year.
Commercial-wise as well. Commercial-wise as well. I mean,
I'm going to interrupt because we've got to wrap up, but we were going to open to questions, but what I'm going to pick up on, you mentioned the US just now, okay? We're going to end on a bit of a controversial note. Now, in your findings, the US was the biggest beneficiary of Muslim travel, Is that correct, Faiz? Now, in light of recent circumstances, is there now a huge opportunity, because there's a lot of people that are probably now reticent about going to the US, what are the opportunities for other destinations? And at this point, I'd like to just bring in, gentleman in the front row, Irfan. Could we have a microphone here, please? Because he's released a study this week, and I just would like you very quickly, if you could tell us your top line findings, because very interesting already. Business is going from the US to elsewhere from a study of a lot of Muslim travellers. So if you could just tell us very quickly, we'll just slot it in real quick. Could you just tell us very quickly, please?
Okay, my name is Irfan Ahmed, and we run a site called irhal.com that caters to the travel needs of the Muslim traveller. We have about 1.5 million Muslims who visit our site on a regular basis, and we did an analysis of the travel behavior of our users, 150,000 of them from January to April 15. and the Trump effect was phenomenal. Like of the, in previous years, 3 cities from the US were among our top 25 cities. This year, it's absolutely zero. They've gone down to rankings of about 45, 50 or beyond. And people are now looking elsewhere.
So where are they looking for? Tell us, because
where do they want to go?
Yeah.
Asia is now an area of a lot of interest. People are looking, like Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, was not among the top destinations, unfortunately, in the last few years.
Yeah.
Now people are beginning to look at that area.
There you go.
So Seoul is another one. South Korea, that's also gaining a lot of traction. Besides that, we have an interest in Eastern Europe, Tbilisi, Dubrovnik. I mean, those are areas where people were not planning to travel earlier, but now they are beginning to look at that.
And Irfan,
and Europe as well.
And didn't you find, though, that still a lot of travellers want to stay within this region, so showing that there's huge potential for those that might consider going elsewhere to stay here?
I mean, because most of our users come from the Middle East, MENA region, and predominantly the GCC, the top 6 cities are regional cities, like Amman, Beirut, Dubai, Doha, Bahrain, and interestingly, Kuwait has now come in from number 20 to number 6. So there is an interest in Kuwait as well.
Thank you, Irfan. Now, if you're staying on, I might bring you in later if that's all right. Enver, just quickly, obviously you see all these booking trends. Have you noticed what Irfan was saying? Has that come across in your booking, or maybe not? I don't know.
Just to be quickly, I think the impact will be temporarily.
Right,
unless Trump will say another stupid things. Yeah.
But if you're quick and get in now while it's a thing.
I see also, but it's controversial, some hoteliers approaching us from US saying, they want to target this market.
Oh.
Yes, especially from Florida.
They're not Donald Trump's friends then, are they?
Orlando, this Disneyland areas,
right,
the villa properties approaching us a lot. There's a demand from the suppliers. They're asking for if they want to target this market.
Right.
In terms of figures, there is a drop, I would say, to US. Also, US is not the biggest destination for us.
Right, sure.
But in previous year to this year, there is a drop, but I think it's temporary.
Temporary, okay, right. Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up because we have another session straight after this, still Halal Tourism. We have 2 more sessions to go. I think what it's proven, first and foremost, is there's so many topics. We could actually sit here probably for another 2 hours, couldn't we, and discuss more. So, yes, I wish we had more time today, but I think next year we can revisit this and we can segment it further and look at it in more depth. So I'd really like all of you to give our panellists a big round of applause. They've been fantastic today. Thank you.